The Deion Sanders era is upon us, but what does that mean? How is it different? We're going to talk about that on today's episode of Locked On Buffs.
You are Locked On Buffs, your daily podcast on the Colorado Buffaloes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? This is Locked On Buffs. I am your host, Kevin Borba, and today we have a special guest, Adam Munsterteiger. Oh, I just butchered it. Dang it. Adam, say it again. Say it again for me.
Kevin, we just went over this.
I know. I just butchered it.
43 years of people butchering my last name. I've gotten used to it. Last name is pronounced Munsterteiger, like
Munsterteiger.
The cheese and the big cat. Yep.
I knew it too, and I was like, "Oh, that's much easier than I thought." And I went with my pronunciation. We did it wrong. That's okay. We'll move on, I guess. Today,
well,
Adam,
you attempted it. I've had people look at my last name and just say, not even going to try that one.
The embarrassing part is, everybody, we literally just talked about it. I nailed it twice, and then I came in, froze. The moment was too big for me, but the moment's not too big for Adam. We're going to be talking about the Deion Sanders era. He's been through pretty much all of the eras of Colorado football, it feels like. We're going to talk about some camp observations, and then we're going to talk about the dreaded Pac-12 or Big 12 discussion. But before we do, this episode is brought to you by Bird Dog. Today's episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs. Go to birddogs.com/lockedon, and when you enter promo code LockedOnCollege, they'll throw in a free custom Bird Dogs Yeti-style tumbler with every order. Okay, Adam, apologies again. We'll get it eventually. This is our first time talking with last names, so we're getting there. Me and Adam met at the spring game, or spring weekend, if you will. But Adam's been on the Colorado beat for a hot minute. I have not. So I wanted to get your perspective on the Deion Sanders Coach Prime era of Colorado football and how it's differed from Carl Durrell, the 1 year of Mel Tucker, and then everyone that precedes them.
Oh gosh, it's completely different than anything we've experienced. There was an uptick in 2016 when Colorado was starting to win games, compete for the Pac-12 South, and there were more media folks around, but we've never seen anything like what we saw post-game press conference of the spring game, and folks not being able to find a place to sit in a really big conference room. So it's completely different, and even the coverage is different now because Deion Sanders comes in and overhauls the roster, and there were a lot of guys on the roster this spring that this staff knew wasn't going to be back, and so they were going to have them talking to the media. So our interview structure was different this spring. It was all media scrum based, which I totally understood why, if you're a new head coach coming in, you want to be careful about who's talking to the media. I get that. I think going forward, we'll probably go back to a more traditional model where you can get into more of the one-on-one interviews, which is important, because I think sometimes when you want to tell a story as a writer, there's a sequencing of questions in the way that you want to approach the interviewee. And sometimes in those media scrums, it's a little bit different. So that was different. Seeing that many people in Folsom Field for a spring game was massively different. We're used to having the ability to kind of look out there and count the bodies and actually having a head count. So it's totally different. It's awesome. I'm excited for Colorado fans that just 7 months ago were having such a hard time waking up on a Saturday and having the will to watch their team play, because it was tough covering that team. I can't imagine if you're a CU alum and you throw on your CU hoodie and go to the grocery store, what that feels like when your football team is getting blown out by however the opponent wants to blow them out by. So it was rough. Carl Durrell's personality couldn't be any more different than Deion Sanders. So just everything has been flipped on his head. It's been challenging for even somebody that's been on the beat as long as I have. But it's been great to see the excitement around Boulder. It really has.
And Adam's over there at 24/7. And they usually, I know you guys get a lot of like inside access a lot of the time, but with Coach Prime and this new I guess era, as we continue to talk about the Deion Sanders era, like you said, it's been closed off. I myself, I cover Stanford as well, and I've talked to Troy Taylor 3 times already. I've interviewed him. I'm working on interviewing the other staffers, whereas Colorado seems a little more close to the chest right now. It feels like they're still trying to get their bearings on everybody. They're trying to figure out I guess, what to say, which press members to watch out for, Adam. No, I'm just kidding. But I feel like the biggest difference is obviously the attention around the program, like you said, the hype, and then obviously the talent of players. I don't know if Colorado has had this many, at least not in recent memory, this many blue chippers in one area. They have Shadur, who is a former 4-star, Travis Hunter, former #1 overall recruit. They have guys like Jimmy Horn, who are blue chip transfers, Xavier Weaver. So can you kind of talk about the roster flip as well? Because I know that was controversial, but I don't know myself. I didn't realize he was going to flip 50 guys for 50 guys. That's obviously a little bit of a overstretch there. It's around 50 in and out, but I didn't realize he was going to do it to that extent. He said it in the team meeting that he was bringing his own luggage. It was Louis. We all know the saying, but did you know it was going to be 50 or around 50? And what is your reaction to it now?
Yeah, it was probably, I don't know, 30% more than what I expected, but I did get the sense very early on that even from the time that Coach Prime was touring Colorado's facilities for the first time, that things were running through his head and that he was going to show up to Boulder with a sledgehammer, basically. And I get that thought process when you're taking over a program that went 1-11 and was dead last in the country in scoring margin, and you have the confidence in yourself in the vision, and obviously he doesn't have the track record of success at the Power 5 level, but he's never been a head coach at the Power 5 level, and it didn't take him long at Jackson State to get things retooled, and he did it there by doing exactly what he's done at Colorado so far. So it makes sense. It is crazy. There are some guys that have survived. Louis Passarello at tight end was a forgotten guy that
Right.
even in the Carl Durrell era, folks were like, Louis Passarello was still around. Folks were kind of surprised that he hadn't transferred out by the time that Coach Prime got
He's a starter now.
And now, yeah, so those are cool stories. You love to see Charlie Offerdahl get called out by Coach Prime as much as he did this spring. So Trevor Woods as well made a strong impression. Some of those young linebackers, Marvin Ham and Isaac Hurtado, earned their number as well. So I've gotten really discouraged when I think of some of these guys that you've developed a relationship, covering their recruiting to the point of them coming to Colorado and developing, and then to see them get cut. And that doesn't feel good. Even if you're a reporter, that there's a human element of it. But then I try to look to some of those. There are some positive stories of guys that have come back. There just aren't as many as the guys that have been departing. It's tough when you see Montana Lamonius Craig go out there and have over 150 yards receiving in the spring game. But I also understand it from the standpoint, he had an opportunity to market himself for NIL after that spring game, which, a lot of those yards came on a busted coverage. So take that opportunity, because I think he would have been probably maybe the fourth receiver at Colorado this year. Maybe he's going to be the fourth receiver or third receiver at Arizona, but he's going to be making more money NIL wise as a result of what he did in the spring game. So most of the moves made sense to me, but it was crazy. It was just nonstop there for a few weeks. I'm sure you were covering all that, and it was just a constant flow of guys leaving the program, and it didn't feel right, but you understood why it was happening.
Yeah, I think the main question, especially people in my inner circle, they were like, is he really getting rid of this many guys? And I was like, he really is. And I was like, it's going to be, and this was like pre-spring game. I was like, the number is going to keep going up. The spring game, which I think Montana did the spring game the perfect way. I don't know if he was planning on transferring or if maybe he was suggested one of those guys. I assume they wanted him back, but he probably saw the writing on the wall that their wide receiver room was a little bit full and it was only going to keep getting more full. I think he did it the right way. He kind of popped off in the spring game. 24/7 was tweeting about him. ESPN was tweeting, obviously, because they were covering it. Everybody was tweeting about Montana Lamonius Craig. He was, I think, and I wrote about it, the MVP of the spring game, really. He had, like you said, it was a busted coverage on 2 catches, and they went for like 98 yards, but he was the star of that game, and I think he kind of took advantage of that and really seized the opportunity, which is what it's all about. We're going to talk about seizing the opportunity in camp, the summer camp, and late fall, I guess, or late spring camp. But before we do, again, this episode is brought to you by Bird Dogs. They are the best shorts out there in the game. Their stretch khaki shorts are designed to fit slimmer through the thigh and leg, giving you a truly sculpted look. Bird Dog shorts do exactly the same, as Lululemon, but they fit way better. They fit way better than regular shorts. They're made of a stiff, restricting cotton. Bird Dogs fix these issues by inventing cloud knit fabric. So if you want to wear these to a graduation, a dinner, I wore them to play softball the other night. They're versatile shorts. Wear them however you want. Go to birddogs.com/lockedoncollege and enter promo code lockedoncollege for a free Yeti style tumbler with your order. That's birddogs.com/lockedoncollege for a free Yeti style tumbler. You won't want to take your Bird Dogs off. We promise you. They're great shorts. Go get them. Go get them. Okay. Let's talk about some camp observations. Like you talked about off before I was mispronouncing your name. And I actually nailed it twice. We practiced. I was like, tell me your name. Nailed it. Okay. Ready. I wasn't ready, clearly. Camp observations. We're not allowed in. You're specifically in Boulder most of the time. I'm in California, so I come over for the bigger events, I guess. But nobody's allowed in right now during fall camp or summer camp. So the only way to get our source of Colorado football is the well-off media, Deion Sanders Jr., who's done a great job, really. Yeah. It's like a reality TV show sometimes, and then other times it's like I'm watching Hard Knocks. It's a great overall production. But what's something that stood out to you in the few videos we've seen so far?
Well, first off, yeah, when you've covered college football for a long time, you notice that every summer around this time, you hear that guys are getting bigger, faster, stronger. It's the greatest summer workout program ever. And then they get into the games and the proof is in the pudding. And in 2016 at Colorado, all those things we heard all summer showed up, and there was great leadership, and the rise was real, and Colorado won the Pac-12 South. Most of those other years I've covered Colorado, I've heard the same positive things this time of year, and things have not panned out once they started hitting bigger opponents out there on the gridiron. So I always take everything that I hear or say this time of year with a grain of salt. Right. In the past, it was interesting. You would work your sources and you'd hear, yeah, this guy came in really looking the part. And last summer, it was Jordan Tyson that from the beginning, everybody you'd run into and even teammates you just run into around town, and they talk about this kid from Texas, Jordan Tyson's going to be really, really good. And that's kind of how you'd start to build the buzz up leading into camp about some of the newcomers. Now you get to see some of this. In Javon Antonio, I had heard came in looking the part, and it's not just hearing that he looked the part. Now you get to see some of the behind the scenes footage and go, holy crap. This guy coming in from a lower level, it looks like an NFL type body out there. And it's crazy. Javon Antonio is actually bigger than Seydou Traore, a tight end that transferred out of the program this spring. So he's going to be a factor for them there. But yeah, you go on down the line. Kavosiey Smoke looks really well put together at the running back position. Derek McClendon looks great on defense. I have to look at the roster. There's a bunch of guys when you start looking at those videos, you go, okay, these guys are really passing the eyeball test. That front seven is littered with guys that look the part. There's a reason why they were brought in, but they have, for the most part, aside from Jordan Tyson and Shane Cokes, who established himself this spring, those guys have a lot of question marks with them. I think the ceiling in the floor for that front seven defensively is really hazy at this point. I don't quite know what to expect out of that group. Now, other groups, I think receiver with Xavier Weaver coming in and starting to build that chemistry with Shedeur Sanders, you feel good about that group. You feel good about the running back group now more so. I mentioned Smoke, and Alden McCaskill IV is a guy that when I watched his film, and I'm not trying to expect that he's going to have Adrian Peterson type success, but I was like, that running style looks exactly like Adrian Peterson, had a ton of success as a true freshman at Houston, was able to start working off the rust during spring ball as a limited participant before he hit the portal. Good size there. So you feel good about a lot of the positions. They don't have Cormani McLean in the mix yet. If he shows up and he shows that he's ready to go, you feel really good about the secondary, especially with Shiloh Sanders coming in there. It's good to see Shiloh in those videos. we expected him to be a buff, but until he announced it, we couldn't talk like he was going to be a buff. So it's good to have that story out there. But yeah, it just this time of year, it's fun for the fans to have that vision of how things are looking. Whereas in the past, they have to rely just for a few notes here and there. And now they actually get to see, the fun nature of the summer too, right? I mean, football can't be serious all the time, and you see the looser side that these guys bring to the table as well.
Yeah, and I think one thing to note too for the fans is usually as media members, we kind of, even if we don't have access, a lot of these teams in the spring or summer, whatever season you guys are in, they practice outside. So you could just like stroll up and just watch them. And Colorado practices indoors most of the time, which kind of obviously makes it hard because you have to get into the building. I liked Javon Antonio, that video. I retweeted it myself. He looks absolutely massive. This is not a comparison as to his skill set. I'm not saying that he will be this person, but he reminded me a lot of Calvin Johnson in terms of how much bigger he looked than everybody around him. Kind of looked like if you dropped a senior in high school on an 8th grade football field. Like he just looks huge. First play of the video, obviously he throws a corner to the ground. May have been offensive pass interference. I don't know. Depends on the ref, but was still cool to see. Like you said, the running back room is interesting. Let's kind of talk about position battles that you're looking out for, because I have 3 off the top of my head that I'm really intrigued by. I keep getting ripped because I think people don't like my take on these position battles, but safety, I think, is probably the most crowded position room, and there's typically only 2 of them on the field. You got Trevor Woods competing, Shiloh Sanders, Roderick Ward from Southern Utah. You're going to have Miles Slusher, Vito Tisdale. You have 5 starting caliber safeties.
Cameron Simon-Craig.
The 6 starting. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's the hard part about these position battles is there's so many guys, and they have 6 starting caliber safeties really. And probably only 2 spots unless one of them slides down to nickel, which again, I don't know how Charles Kelly's defense operates with that much nickel usage. So that's one. Running back room, I think, and this is, I'm not trying to do disservice to Kavosi Smoke or Dylan Edwards, who put in a lot of work this spring, but I think it's Alton McCaskill's job to lose. Receiver, there's a battle for that 4th spot. I think Travis Hunter, Jimmy Horn, and Xavier Weaver are kind of the 3 guys that I view as the favorites. And then there's that 4th spot that I think is the opening. What position battles are you looking out for?
If Colorado is going to exceed expectations, and I think the odds makers have it at 3.5 wins right now?
3.5, yep.
3.5. To hit the over on that, I think if the D line forms around Shane Cokes, we know Shane Cokes came in and was legit this spring and is not only legit on the field, but has also become the leader of that group. And I thought gave the best speech out of all those leaders, the most well thought out message to the team.
Ivy League guys, though. Ivy League guys. And, the question there was, well, that's quite the jump, right? He had success at that level, but talking to offensive linemen and even his defensive line teammates this spring, I mean, people couldn't have said more nice things about what Shane Cokes was doing. So I think he's pretty well established in there. But outside of that, there's a lot of questions there. And so I think the pecking order there on the D-line is going to be really interesting. Now, that is a group that's going to rotate probably more than any other position on the team. So it's not necessarily about just finding your top 3 guys. It's going to be about finding 6, 7, 8 guys maybe that can rotate in there and help you win. And I mentioned there's a reason you can go down every transfer that came in on the D line, starting with a Leonard Payne Jr. And okay, I see why they brought him in. Mm-hmm. But here's also the question mark was, well, he didn't do this at his last stop, or, he wasn't at the Power 5 level, kind of like a Shane Cokes. He's got to come in and prove it this summer. So I don't know how good that defensive line is going to be. Now, they ran off some guys that were pretty good last year. Neem Rodman, Jalen Sami, they weren't the reason that Colorado went 1-11 last year. Now, they could have been better. There's no question about it. So that's where I think my most critical eye is going to come in terms of a position battle going into the preseason camp. And yeah, safety is going to be intriguing. Now, safety and running back are those positions that we sit here in June and July and dissect till we're blue in the face. And then injuries tend to dictate those 2 positions more times than not. Mm-hmm. But safety has been a position
I feel like I was a broken record for like a decade straight of saying Colorado needs more safeties. They don't have enough depth at safety. And now all of a sudden,
Got your wish.
Deion Sanders comes into Boulder, and it's like, whoa, yeah, like we haven't seen this type of depth. And I started covering Colorado in 2003. And so I hear all the stories from Neil Welk and BG Brooks, the old CU reporters that were covering the Bill McCartney years, that were covering this program from the late 80s through the 90s. And they talk about how every position was stacked like that back in the day. I just haven't witnessed it. This is the first time that I've seen a position like safety this stacked in Boulder.
Yeah, when I looked at the safeties, I'm like, because people keep asking me for two deeps. They keep asking me who's going to start. I'm like, I really don't know. Like, I haven't seen these guys. The only time we see them is the videos. And so I feel like Miles Slusher is kind of like someone I just gravitate towards too, because he was one of Arkansas's best players. Vito Tisdale has a lot of experience, but then Trevor Woods has a lot of experience. Shiloh Sanders, a lot of experience. And so it's just really difficult to kind of decipher who does what. Before we keep going, I want to thank all my listeners and watchers and viewers, however you guys listen to the show, for watching every day. Everydayers, it's what I call my everyday listeners. Make sure to send in your questions. We got a mailbag tomorrow. The mailbag gets a little intense, Adam. We've addressed Pat Narduzzi. We have addressed some starting lineups. I have a good question tomorrow that I've had to think on, and it's what program what coach took over a 1-11 team or 2-10 team and had the best jump the next year. And so I got to do some deep dive for that one, because there's been a lot of bad teams, but I don't know if there's been a lot of great turnarounds quickly. But keeping going with the position battles, this one's underrated. People don't care about this when I bring it up, but backup quarterback. God forbid, don't want it to happen. Shedeur Sanders could get injured, though. We're all human. You could roll your ankle walking down the steps. It happens to the best of us. I won't say impressed with the quarterback outside of Shedeur. Obviously, he was great at the spring game, but everyone else, I was like, that's fine. Like they look like backup quarterbacks in college. But if it comes down to we need someone to step up at Colorado, I don't know who that person is. I'm looking at Casey Wiseman to kind of emerge, one of the newer freshman guys. Is that a position battle that you're also looking forward to? Is the QB2 and QB3 stuff?
Yeah, no question. It's funny when I get asked by random folks, I think you're going to get this too. You always get the question in the grocery store line of how many wins is Colorado going to get this year? And it's like, it's such a loaded question. In that setting, you just want to give a quick answer. And I always give a response here recently of there's two scenarios. There's one where Shedeur Sanders stays healthy.
Right.
And I think Colorado is going to exceed expectations and win 5, 6, 7 games.
That's where I'm at too.
Yeah. There's the scenario where Shedeur Sanders does not stay healthy, and I would not want to have that over bet.
Yeah.
And that's no shot, obviously, at the young quarterbacks in the program. They're just young. I like some of the stuff that we saw from Ryan Staub in the 2 open spring practices this year. I think his skill set is really going to fit in well with this offense. But gosh, he should have been in high school going to prom, not having to learn Sean Lewis's up-tempo offense. And so there was just a clear operation style that Shedeur Sanders had that you just can't have as a true freshman coming in as an early enrollee. So I don't know, maybe they have a surprise up their sleeve that there'll be another quarterback added. I don't know. If there is going to be, they've done a really, really good job of keeping that under wraps, because I think that is the biggest question mark with this team. Now, you led into this perfectly, because Shedeur Sanders is such a smart quarterback and he doesn't take unnecessary hits. And when he has in his college career, that's when his dad, Coach Prime, has gotten into his ear and gotten into him. He's not allowed to take hits out there because they know how valuable he is. But you've got 22 guys flying around out there. And so, anything can happen. But if there's a quarterback you feel good about being smart in the pocket, it's Shedeur, but there's just no guarantees, like you said.
Yeah, and it was no knock on the younger guys. It was just when you're watching, because they did like the 7-on-7 stuff. When you're watching Shedeur go in there, he's zipping throws everywhere. He's precise. He knows where he's going. Most of the time it was to Travis, so I think most of us knew where he was going. But the younger guys, they just seemed young, and that's okay. I mean, they're, like you said, he should have been going to high school prom. Instead, he was playing against grown men. Kind of, not that college football is a professional job, but those guys were fighting for their jobs, because a lot of those guys were asked to leave the program in the following days. But yeah, that's another position battle I'm looking forward to. Another battle kind of takes place in the boardroom that we're going to talk about is the Pac-12 or Big 12. Which one is Colorado better suited for? We'll talk about that when we come back. And we are back. Welcome back. We're going to be talking about the Pac-12 or the Big 12. Yesterday it was reported that the Pac-12 agreed to a grant of rights in theory, by handshake via voicemail. I don't know what it was. No pen was put to paper. So that's all we need. That's all that matters, really. There's no TV deal. No pen was put to paper. Everyone keeps asking me Pac-12, Big 12. I just keep telling them whatever's smarter. I don't think Colorado or any team in the Pac-12 wants to leave the Pac-12, but if they force their hand and they're losing a lot of money, shout out Larry Scott and his Comcast adventures. I think that they just got to do what they got to do. What have you been hearing over there in Boulder? What's the vibe there?
Well, the preference all along has been to make it work with the Pac-12. And there's the academic side of it where it makes more sense for Colorado to be in the Pac-12. And I don't know what the number is right now, but I remember when Colorado jumped from the Big 12 to the Pac-12, the figure was there was 5 times as many CU alumni in the Pac-12 footprint than the Big 12 footprint. So that's a big deal of being able to engage with your donor bases. And let's be honest, like everybody would rather, I can't say everybody, but most people would rather travel to San Francisco, to the Bay Area, to the Pacific Northwest, to Arizona and LA than a lot of those Big 12 cities. But I will tell you, it's been disappointing being on this beat compared to when Colorado was in the Big 12 from a passion standpoint. I've said this many times. It's like the Pac-12 just has this wine and cheese feel to it, to where
it does.
A lot of these stadiums you go in, it's like I've been in better environments at high school games than what we have here. And so that part of it has been tough. And certainly the Larry Scott debacle and everything that's gone wrong with the Pac-12 since Colorado joined it has put a bad taste in everybody's mouth. And so the problem is if you go back into the Big 12, it's not the same Big 12 that you left. And so it would be different. Now, I think, honestly, as far as we know right now, things are kind of splitting hairs. And I would think the fan base is pretty split in terms of what they would prefer.
Yeah.
What Rick George and Colorado's administration is going to do is whatever they think is going to be best viewed in the future of college football. And it might not just come down to money for the next 5 years, but it might be what is the conference and situation that's going to allow us to be at the table when the next dominoes start to fall with realignment, because that's the key. And Brian Howell and I were talking on a video the other day, hiring Coach Prime and changing some of the restrictions to allow to bring transfers in is a big start for Colorado to be relevant in college football again. But they're still not viewed in a very positive light nationally. And that could change quickly, though, because you went out to Boulder and you saw how special a place it is. It's been kind of this I wouldn't say sleeping giant, but it's been this program that has underachieved for a very long time that should maybe not be at the top of the haves in college football because they don't have that type of donor base. But
there's potential.
It's a special place, and it needs to have a seat at the table when things get to the next level of college football. We don't know what that's going to look like, when that's going to happen, but Colorado has to do whatever it has to put itself in the best position as far as that goes going forward.
Yeah, I think the best position, which a lot of people don't want to hear this, the Big 12, I don't think I've said it before and I'll say it again. The Big 12 is a solid option, but like you said, the Pac-12, they have more ties here. It makes more sense. Nobody in Boulder is looking forward to a 5-hour flight to Morgantown, West Virginia. I'd promise you no one is, or Orlando to play UCF. I think the Big 12 in theory is a cool idea just because, and I've said this all along, no one likes uncertainty. And right now the Pac-12 is just full of uncertainties. And the Big 12 is they got a more steady direction. But if the Pac-12 can kind of get out of their own way and announce something, or at least a semblance of something, I think a lot of people would be surprised at the response by Pac-12 schools. And yeah, like you said, Boulder's special. I think they're a rising program. I actually followed Colorado probably my first 2 years of college, because my good friend and high school basketball teammate Mustafa Johnson played for Colorado. So we went to high school together, and when he was there, they had a very solid year. The COVID year was good. They made it to the Alamo Bowl, and so a lot going on in Colorado. There's a lot to look forward to. I want to thank you again, Adam, for coming on, talking all things Colorado football. Love to have you on again. Next time I'll get your name, I promise. Me and names, people always ask me mine. I got an easy one. It's 5 letters. You got the multiple vowels going on, the 4 vowels. You got a whole thing going on. But I appreciate you coming on. Go follow him on Twitter. I have his Twitter under his name there, and you can follow all of his work over at 24/7 Buff Stampede. Make sure to follow along, because he's the insider that you need on the ground. Adam's, a lot of the stuff I aggregate is from Adam, and he's got it all. So Adam, again, thank you for coming on.
Kevin, it was great meeting you when you came out to Boulder. Look forward to seeing you in person again in the future. And this was a lot of fun. So definitely have me on again.
Absolutely. We'll see you. Have a great Wednesday or a great Thursday, everybody.